Great.
Hi, everyone. Good evening from Mumbai. I'm Elsa Marie De Silva, founder and CEO of the Red Dot Foundation. So, welcome to Sunday Reflections. It's a live show that I have with friends of mine who are doing interesting work. And today with us, we have Alanoud Alsharekh. She is my peer at the Stanford program, the Center for Democracy, Development, and the Rule of Law. And she's a Kuwaiti gender activist. Hi, Alanoud. How are you?
Hi, Elsa. Thank you for having me.
So, Alanoud, first of all, how's it going? We were just talking about the situation in Kuwait during COVID-19, but why don't you tell our viewers about how's it going for you over there?
Well, as we were discussing, the situation in Kuwait has been interesting in that it hasn't been like these dramatic peaks and declines that we've seen in other countries. We've had a consistent number of new cases throughout. So I think that our first phase and our second phase have melded into one long phase. And the country has tried to manage the spread of COVID-19 through having total lockdown at one point, and then partial lockdowns and curfews throughout. And we've only come out of that about 2.5 months ago. So like everywhere else, life isn't exactly back to normal, but everybody has sort of readjusted to fit this new normal. And people are exploring Kuwait more, so they're getting to know the pleasures and wonders in their own countries, and getting to know their family and friends. Kind of a more intimate relationship, because people are still social distancing and they're trying not to be exposed to large numbers. So it has been an interesting and sometimes very frustrating time, especially that it takes a toll on the economy.
That's great. You are a professor at several colleges around the world. So how are you coping? Is it all online now? And, or, is there going to be some blended learning as well?
Well, in terms of the general education here in Kuwait, they haven't opted for blending learning. So everything's happening online. And my daughter, she's at college in the UK, and she's doing it online as well. I think people are still worried about the risk. As for my work, I'm doing everything, even the events in Kuwait. They're happening online. We put our offline activities to as much of a stop as we possibly can. And it's been challenging, really, to try and translate, especially training programs that I do in my consultancy, Ibtkar, that focus on political leadership and campaign management, for example. It's been challenging to do these activities solely online. But with each challenge, we learn how to think creatively and try to make sure that people aren't zoomed out or webinared out, because after a while, it's all this content online and this content that is important and interesting, but I feel like people miss the stimulation of being in the same place and feeding off each other.
That's right. Yesterday I met Supreet after ages, and it was just nice to talk to somebody in person, like see them across the room and not see them across the screen. And it's just a different feeling. I think all this is changing the way we interact. And I'm not sure if the next generation, like my nieces are all very young, how it's going to affect them in the long term, where places that they continue to study only online. At least my nieces are in Singapore and Melbourne has opened up now. She's gone back to school, but for a few months it was really hard on a 6-year-old, and she was like, she's the only child, so she was like, you don't know how hard it is, she told me one day. I was like, yeah, but there are
Yeah,
people who have it harder. So tell us a little bit about this Domestic Violence Act that you got the Kuwaiti Parliament to pass. How exciting.
it is exciting. I wouldn't say that I got it passed. But
But you were one of the team, and I know you all have been working for many years on several legislative changes. So tell us more.
yeah. Well, through two organizations, Abolish 153, which is the campaign to get rid of the honor killing legislation in Kuwait, and its sister organization, Ibtkar, which is a registered volunteer group that really focuses on domestic violence survivors. We've been really, working in very close quarters with the Women's Committee at Kuwait National Assembly, and we've been pushing for this very important law, which gives protection to abuse survivors, and also, which is very important, it punishes those who try to stop abuse survivors from reporting abuse or try to dissuade them from, taking this matter public to the authorities. Because what happens in conservative societies across the world, I don't think this is unique to Kuwait, is that people will pressure the survivor to not break up the family or to, have patience or to just accept the fact that abuse will happen because, you know, uh, some people have this temperament or they're prone to tantrums, but they're basically good people. And this is a very destructive cycle, as you well know. So we were for many years working with survivors and trying to provide services to them, but without a legal cover, which put us in a very precarious situation and limited the amount of help that we could offer, both from a legal perspective and from perspective of sheltering them and providing them with resources for a dignified life. And now that this law exists, which is really a huge relief for us, this means that the government shelter can finally be functional. And it means that we and the volunteers that work with us have a legal cover so that we're not as liable as we were before for offering abuse survivors refuge and these services. So it's a comprehensive legislation, and within it there's a provision to amend and abolish other legislations like the honor killing legislation that we're working on, like what they call the kidnap and marry law, and these are all very old legislations and that are, they're relics of a past era, and their mere existence, I feel, is offensive and dangerous to women. So hopefully, the passing of this law will have a knock-on effect on other laws and legislations, and it will really move the situation of abuse survivors forward a great deal.
What has been the reaction of women in your country?
Just overwhelming relief, and also they've been super supportive of the fact that civil society groups can be powerful actors on a national level. So we have made this issue a priority and lobbied for it, and held cultural events for it, and worked with international organizations such as yours on some aspects. And really, we've tried to make it a focal point of our work. And in the beginning, there was a little bit of resistance around it. Uh, People are uncomfortable having legislations inside their domestic space in this part of the world. But what's at stake is more important because we have to protect those most vulnerable amongst us. The ones that don't have a voice, that can't protect themselves from being abused daily and in different ways. So there's been really a kind of a euphoria attached to the passing of this legislation, and it has renewed the in the vigor of civil society and NGOs and in their activism to enact change.
Kuwait has always been, quite progressive when it comes to gender. And do you think that this law will get the other countries in the region to also consider something like that if they don't already have it?
Well, I'll tell you something. Kuwait is very progressive on a social level, but on a legislative level, it has been lagging behind our neighbors. So a lot of the countries around us have a domestic violence law, and they have working shelters. So we're a little bit behind the curve on this. We're behind the curve as well in ensuring leadership positions for women and having representational quotas and having a top-down initiative to make sure that women are involved in policy making and to make sure that these issues, which are community issues, abuse is not just a woman's, it's not just a woman's cause, it's a community cause. But there's not enough women at the policy making table. There's not enough women in our legislative committees. So what we need to see really is more kind of a top-down involvement to match the grassroots and bottoms-up movements that we see women being very active in, and maybe we don't see the same in the neighboring countries. I think it's where these two meet that you have the most change happening. And I'm hopeful. We have elections coming up soon, and a group of wonderful women that were trained in political leadership through my consultancy, and I have launched a platform called Mudawi's List. And this platform is dedicated to giving women candidates higher visibility and supporting them in what is quite a hostile political environment for women candidates.
Are you watching the US elections? And it's surprising that 4 years later, you still have media being biased towards a vice presidential woman candidate. You would have thought that they would have learned from the last time around, isn't it?
I think it's the same wherever you are, Elsa. Women get judged much more harshly. They on their physical appearance, on their tone, on their likability, on what emotions they show, and it's taken that if a woman kind of performs not at the best level, it's taken to be indicative of her entire gender. So it becomes more difficult for women to follow in her footsteps instead of easier. And I see this happening in this part of the world as well. When women first made it to parliament in 2009, there was so much focus about whether they're wearing a hijab or they're not, and how emotional they're being, instead of focusing on, are they attending their committees? Are they presenting new legislations? Are they trying to enact positive social and legislative change? So I think that unfortunately the pressure on women to be kind of this idealized version in every way exists wherever they are in the globe. And I think it's going to take another generation or two for this cognitive bias against women in leadership to disappear, or at least for women in leadership positions to become more normalized and accepted.
And it's such a hypocritical stance because you look at the men around, such women who are of such high caliber, and they just don't meet the cut. And yet, some of the criticism is unfounded. It's ridiculous in my view. But tell us a little more about this political leadership that you help women in your country go through. I find that it takes a lot to get women to believe in themselves, to take risks, and also to give them a little bit of capacity building to help them navigate these spaces. So was it very difficult for you, or do you think that given the opportunity, women, seize the day and then they actually thrive?
Well, Elsa, you and I both work in this activism space, and we lobby and we go meet legislators and policymakers and governmental figures. And I realized that there were not enough women at the table. So I started to create these programs that were uniquely made for women in Kuwait and in this part of the world, the Arabian Gulf region, so that they will get over this whether it's lack of confidence or fear of participation, or try to bridge a little bit of the skill gap, because unfortunately here women aren't here and elsewhere, they aren't getting to the gateway positions, head of unions, sports clubs, co-ops, municipalities, etc., that usually are, what they use to leap from that position to running for political office. And so we created these programs with international partners to develop their skill sets and to focus on political networking, capacity building, fundraising, all the skills that you need to run a successful campaign. And then we focused on running programs to train people on how to run the campaign, even if they're not running for political office themselves, so that these women who are running for office, they will be supported. And for me, the idea of political change is not just running for office, but it's also starting NGOs and political movements that focus on issues that perhaps the government hasn't been paying attention to, or that legislators haven't been making a priority, that are really needed for positive change to happen. So I'm very excited to see that two of the alumni of Ibtikar's programs are running for office in 2020, and another group of them have launched Mudawi's List, the platform to support women candidates, and many of them have either enhanced the NGOs that they were running or started new campaigns to help the most disenfranchised, to spread knowledge about a woman's healthcare and women's unique needs for her fertility and child-rearing years, etc., and focusing on the legal education for women. So I'm very happy to be part of this movement and to occupy this space in Kuwait right now. And I think it's not lack of ambition and not lack of skill or even lack of training, as much as it is really not a woman-friendly space. So you will be taking a risk and putting your career on hold, being abused and trolled online way more than male candidates, and damaging your reputation, because the harshness of the attacks on women candidates is always, for me, is always the worst part of the process, because they seem to be on a much more personal level than the attacks on male candidates. And so it's making sure that despite all of that, there's a safe space for women, and there's a support network for them because they will need it. And there's service providers that are in Mudawi's List database that offer preferential rates and that help them, and volunteers who are willing to join their campaigns. So I'm hopeful that despite all of these obstacles, women realize that their voices are important and they need to run, because that's the only way that they will get to office right now and make a difference.
Have you ever considered running for office yourself?
Well, it's always something that keeps getting brought up. So I would consider it, but right now I feel that my role is to support women who are running for office, and to create more and more safe avenues for that to happen, and to push for legislative and representational changes. And I worry that if I'm running for office, I wouldn't be able to provide this service and this role like I am now. But it's always something that is possible in the future.
How exciting, and something to look forward to as well. Is there a law for online harassment, to take care of those that are being abused online?
Well, I think there's like everywhere else, there's what we call electronic crime laws in Kuwait. But the trolling can take different forms. It can be shaming, which isn't exactly breaking the law, but it's devastating to the receiving party. So even within the parameters of the law, the abuse that women running for office or that women who are being even appointed are subjected to, I think far outweighs that of men. So even online spaces aren't that safe for women. Um, that's why we see in this part of the world, we see that the participation of women online with their names and their faces is still less than men.
Mm.
And hopefully, as our young women grow up with their political rights, which is something I didn't grow up with. This is something we had to fight for, and we only got our full political rights 15 years ago. But to my daughter's generation, this is a given right for them. And there are other rights that we had to fight for that they didn't have to. So the same way I stand on the shoulders of giants and these amazing pioneers who went and studied and changed the socio-political system so that I can work and that I can have a voice. I'm hoping that the work we do will make it easier for my daughter's generation to start at a much farther point and demand other laws and other opportunities. So despite the depressing reality at this moment, I'm very hopeful for the future.
I actually think that the younger generations, because I'm just thinking about my nieces, they have lived in a world that is completely digital. And they, in a digital world, at least from their point of view, especially with both working parents, they are exposed to a very different world from maybe what we were exposed to. And I do think that they will not put up with the inequality. They are going to demand for a much better world, and hopefully they will get it. So I'm looking forward to that. But we have a question from Venkatesh, who always joins us. Good evening, Venkatesh. Happy Dasera. So he asks actually, how important is it to have an empathy based generation? Don't you think initiatives need to come from the education policy level apart from law to reduce domestic violence or gender equality? So I don't know about Kuwait, but here we definitely don't have, rights. Not, I won't say rights-based education, but we don't have, education that talks about sexuality, consent culture, and healthy relationships. So, what is it like in Kuwait, and what's your thought on that? And do you work with youth as well?
Well, I agree 100%. I think it has to have a holistic approach to change in a way that's enough and that guarantees safety for everyone. I think we don't just rely on the law. We have to tackle it through curriculums. We have to make sure that media are gender sensitive and they report abuse in a way that doesn't put the blame on the woman. So I'll give you an example of uh, how things should not be reported. There was a woman that was harassed and she was physically accosted uh, here in Kuwait, and both the English language and Arabic language media commented that she wasn't wearing something too revealing, as if what you wear, is a
We
deterrent.
lost your volume. Sorry.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You said both the media said that she wasn't wearing something revealing.
Yes. Yeah. So both the English and the Arabic media reported it in this way that she wasn't wearing something too revealing, as if what you're wearing is an invitation for harassment. So this type of reporting we need to put a stop to, I think, and we definitely need to educate both sexes, because both sexes can be subjected to harassment and to abuse. And the fact that it has to be empathy based, I agree with 100%. And I see it more um, in the younger generation here. I'm pretty sure it's the same case where you are, Elsa, that they are more aware of social justice issues. They are more gender sensitive, and they understand that for sustainability, they need to be sharing a lot more, sharing power, sharing their space, sharing the same values and respect, etc. But we all need to work on tackling this better through educational curriculums and through really holding the media accountable when they report things in this way.
Yes, the example that you gave is very representative in India too, where the media are very insensitive. And I remember once I was in Singapore and I was reading a newspaper where a woman was raped or assaulted at a pub after she had consumed a lot of alcohol. But the way they reported it, there was no victim blaming at all. It was a fact. She drank, and it's her right. But that doesn't mean that somebody can violate her rights while she is intoxicated. And it was totally a different form of thing, not something that I was used to. And I actually wrote an article, I think, about it, where I said that Indian media should also, I don't know, I'm losing connection or something like that. But yeah, so Indian media too needs to be a little more sensitive. So thanks for sharing that example. So what are you looking forward to?
I'm sorry, the live stream isn't so clear. Did you ask me what I was looking forward to?
What's next for you? Yeah.
What's next for me? Well, I'm hoping to launch a program that will focus on the power of youth, because the youth here, I feel, are feeling a little disenfranchised from the democratic process, and I feel that they have a lot of power. They have a lot of these digital tools at their fingertips. Their voices can be heard a lot more clearly than generations before them, and we've seen with the climate change initiatives, for example, the youth can lead older generations in these fundamental changes that we all need to wake up to and embrace. And so I'm hoping once we are done with elections in December, I can launch this program that will focus on youth power and youth initiatives, because we don't want young people to feel like they are powerless, or that their voices don't matter, or that they can't create avenues for change, because they really can, more so now than any other time. And I'm really excited to see what the feedback will be, and to learn from young voices and their concerns, because if we don't involve them in civil society work at a young age, how can we be representative of what's important for them in the future?
That's very true. And what's your advice to your 16-year-old self?
Can you repeat that, Elsa?
What's your advice to your 16-year-old self?
Oh, my advice to my 16-year-old self is just make waves. It's okay. When I was younger, and people will tell me that you're coming across as too strong, as if strong was a bad word. To be a strong woman was something that you needed to tone down. But and I took that advice to heart. I tried to be less strong, whatever that means. And I wish I could go back to my 16-year-old self and say, no, stay strong, and people will adjust to your strength. But if you mute your own voice, then you lose it, and it takes a long time to regain that strength that you lost, and that conviction in yourself and what you were doing.
Absolutely. Women are always socially conditioned to withdraw into themselves, to be smaller than they are, and like as though being your own true self is a violation of principles. But I'm glad that you found your way and you are the woman that you are, because you're doing great things, and all the very best to you. So thank you, Alanoud, for sharing your afternoon with us on a Sunday, and keep, making waves. And I look forward to many women joining your parliament. So good luck and all the very best. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Elsa. It's been a pleasure.